Hello and welcome to the fourth episode of the NetScaler podcast. I'm Brian Huhn, and I'm joined in person today by my co-host Jason Poole. Together, we're going to explore the ins and outs of application delivery and security, deep dive into stories from the industry, and learn about the business challenges that face IT teams and how they overcome them. Jason, can you introduce our guest for today?
Sure, I will. Thank you, Brian. Today's topic is one for which NetScaler is perhaps most famous and which brings value to millions of users every day. That is NetScaler in the Citrix environment. It's been a very valuable tool for thousands of Citrix customers for the last 15 years. NetScaler is the device to provide the best-in-class remote access, availability, optimization, and unique troubleshooting capabilities for everything Citrix. Small customers have adopted NetScaler as a virtual device, and larger deployments have benefited from multiple larger hardware devices to provide better service for their Citrix environments. And today, we'll look at the top areas where NetScaler adds real value to the Citrix environments. And joining us to discuss this today is Stephen Wright, a NetScaler product manager and ex-consultant of many years who has installed NetScaler in countless environments and seen many a customer light up with joy as soon as he switched it on. Stephen, welcome to the podcast. Did I get everything right in that intro?
Good morning. Absolutely did. It's got to be 15 years now that I've been working on gateway environments, 2 years product management, 8 years before that working in a consultancy team directly for Citrix, and then with a partner before that.
So you are everything Citrix. You've been branded throughout, as we say, and it just goes all the way through your bloodstream.
Cut me open, you'll find Citrix printed right through the middle. Or maybe NetScaler these days.
Maybe NetScaler these. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. And so let's just dive in. So while there are many areas of value, including the high availability of resources and analytics, which we will get to as we go through this, the biggest draw for Citrix customers is to use NetScaler as the gateway device for their Citrix environment. So what is it about NetScaler that makes it the preferred access method for Citrix?
Well, the NetScaler has Gateway. Gateway links directly up to Citrix environments. So if you were to deploy, for example, a VPN platform, then normally a VPN platform would provide the user with a very large amount of access to the environment. You would get the application you wanted to provide them, but they would also have access to printers, file shares, a whole variety of things that you would then have to lock down. Conversely, the gateway environment would connect directly and natively to Storefront. So when you published a particular application and the user logged in remotely, they would see only those applications that you'd made available to them. And then when they launched the application, you would get that granular level of access specifically to that application or published desktop. This would make it more secure, it would make it faster, and it would give it a better level of user experience.
Great. So you've talked a bit about access, and you just mentioned more granular access, which we know some of our customers really have that demand for. Now, how does NetScaler provide that granular access to these environments?
NetScaler uses something called the ICA protocol, which is what's being used in your Citrix environment internally to transmit all of the data back and forth to a published app. Now, of course, as you know, for a Citrix environment, you would imagine screen sharing and keyboard updates, and they would be sent back and forth over that ICA protocol. So what the NetScaler is doing is providing a secure demarcation point for people connecting remotely. It's allowing access into that storefront environment, again, with that native integration that I talked about, and then it's directly shipping that ICA protocol straight through. And because we've had access into the smarts of our own protocol, we're able to observe that data going through and block some areas, allow other areas, put optimizations in place where necessary, and really provide the best level of access for ICA traffic.
And so let me just step back there. So is NetScaler inspecting the end user's device to decide on their security credentials and environment before they allow them in and send them to places?
That's absolutely a possibility. With the NetScaler, you've got something called a Gateway vServer, which is what the user's connecting to. And the Gateway vServer can be linked to something called a AAA vServer, Authentication vServer. Now, that Authentication vServer uses a bit of logic we call N-factor. You don't really need to know this. It's just for the terminology I use as I run through. So the user's hitting the Gateway vServer, and from their point of view, they see a logon screen and then they authenticate and it works. But internally, when they hit that logon screen, it's actually sending them to the AAA server. The AAA server has a whole series of authentication steps it can take. And some of those steps would include something called EPA. An EPA would allow you to scan the endpoint and then build the outcome of those checks on the endpoint into that deterministic chain of what happens next, which could be as simple as saying the user comes in, we check they're on a corporate device, we check their antivirus is up to date, and then we provide them access if they are, or if they're not, here's a slew of other steps.
Okay. And so EPA endpoint analysis, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So I've worked with this in the past, and many devices can say you can come in, you can go to a quarantine if your virus is not up to date. And so on. So that's nothing new. But is there anything more specific that NetScaler can do that's related to the granular control of what users can do within that Citrix environment?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There is a whole set of determinations that we've just been talking about. Now, as you said, you could quarantine the user, you could only allow them to update their antivirus. It could be controls like that. But I think what you're alluding to is a question around the controls once they've gained access.
Yeah.
So we said this person can log in, they are on a corporate device, but Stephen's normally working in England. At the minute, he's in San Francisco. So perhaps we don't want him to be able to use file and print in that location. That might be a bit of a crazy example, but you can easily imagine as people travel around the world that there are areas where you would want them to have one level of access versus another. So once you've made those determinations, whatever they might be for your business, you can then block specific channels going on inside of ICA. And that could be to turn off files, to turn off print, it could be to provide a different level of access. So they're still getting the published application or resource that you've made available, but they're getting different rights of access to that application.
So we discussed the EPA and the endpoint analysis, letting them in, keeping them in. And I was just wondering what else the NetScaler does to provide. We've got these virtual channels and they can be controlled at the Citrix end manually, but is there an interplay between the NetScaler and the Citrix environment to maybe adjust these dynamically, depending on the environment from which the user's coming in?
Yes, absolutely. What I've been talking about is kind of manual controls there. So you could have said inside of the Citrix or Zen desktop environment that you wanted with policy to say that this user didn't get a particular channel coming through. So we might say people in this group don't get access to file and print. People with these settings don't get access to this. What the NetScaler is adding on to that is the NetScaler is saying, these users aren't supposed to have this access. We're not going to allow this access to be transmitted. So you've got that additional layer of security there. But what the NetScaler can also do separately to that is the NetScaler can say that I have made a determination about the endpoint, perhaps with endpoint analysis. I've made this determination and I see that this user is not on, let's say, a corporate device. This user is not on a corporate device. Maybe they are, maybe their antivirus is not up to date. We've made these determinations and we can pass the results of those determinations into the Zen desktop environment. And that's really where the bond happens, because the NetScaler has made these determinations pre-login, perhaps, or during the login process. We've passed that information into the Zen desktop environment. And then once we've got a series of policies in the Zen desktop environment, we can trigger them based on that. So we can say, yes, this is Stephen, but his device hasn't been updated. I'm still going to give him access, perhaps to update his device, but I'm not going to allow him to do all of these things.
So it's another granular level of control that, Stephen, normally I corporate device, I let you download files and store them because I know the disk is encrypted. Stephen, usually when you're at home or in the office, I let you print. But actually, when you're in an internet cafe, I don't want you to do that because you might leave it on the printer and some might be sensitive information.
Or perhaps block, screen recording, maybe someone walks over to your computer.
Absolutely. So that's a really powerful tool that only NetScaler has.
It's a really powerful tool that only NetScaler has. We see it implemented at the vast majority of our large enterprise corporate clients. It's a huge, huge feature. Again, as you say, to be able to say users aren't locked out in general, but perhaps we have this kind of gray level where we say they are let in, but they're let in with less rights. Really, really important if you want to be able to provide a more robust level of access.
Right. So let me summarize that. So just in the access part alone, there's so much value in that you can inspect the end user's device, make decisions about where they're coming from, who they are, what the security status of their device is, and then automatically and dynamically adjust the security policies to suit what your company wants to have.
Yeah, The controls you've got are quite vast. At the simplest level, they're not. They're not vast in terms of it's scary, you've got so many options. Doing things which are fairly straightforward is very, very easy. As I said earlier, you've got a gateway vServer which connects to the AAA vServer. The AAA vServer has some logic associated. That logic can simply be, we will do radius, then we will do LDAP. Perhaps the logic could change to say we will do radius, LDAP, and then we'll do an EPA scan. And of course, as I said, the outcome of the EPA scan could simply be fed into the Zendesk environment to say the user did or didn't pass the corporate device check, and we move on. But because you're controlling those flows, you could, for example, say if the user didn't pass the EPA check, then we want to do a different step in the authentication logic. Because you're building that authentication logic yourself, it can be as small or as broad as you need it to be to implement whatever your organizational controls are necessary.
Nice. So we've kind of covered now that NetScaler can provide highly secure and customized access for Citrix environments. But NetScaler's history has a lot more to do with its pedigree and load balancing. How do we provide high availability for those Citrix environments?
I think there's a couple of answers to that. We've been talking about gateway. So I'll first off answer gateway. When the user connects into a gateway environment, they're connecting usually to an HA pair. From a consulting perspective, we would always recommend HA pairs. So the user's connecting into an HA pair. If the primary node fails, the secondary node will immediately take over in that environment. So that's the first answer. High availability, the pairs are of course highly available. Putting that to one side, when the user tries to initiate their connection, they'll probably be connecting to some kind of FQDX, remote.mycoolcompany.com. The NetScaler can provide GSLB, Global Service Load Balancing. That will allow us to direct the user to a particular data center. And of course, those data centers will have the HA pairs that I just talked about. So we might say that all of the users in America connect to one or more American data centers. All of the users in the UK connect to the UK data center. But we might then go on from there within GSLB to say that if you detected a failure at one of the American data centers, to direct users to another American data center. Equally, we might say if all of the American data centers, Lord forbid, were to fail, we wanted to connect those users to a data center in the UK. And again, we can build policy logic around that. So now what you've got is high availability in terms of users connecting to data centers. We've got high availability within the data center itself once the users have connected. And then going on from there, the gateway platform will connect the users to backend servers, plural. Now, those backend servers will be connected generally for things like Storefront, LDAP, Radius, normal backend servers you would imagine, will be connected through local load balancing services, which of course will have monitors on them and will seamlessly map out failures. So for example, if I had two Storefront servers at one of my US data centers and one of them were to fail, that would automatically be detected by the NetScaler. That Storefront server would be taken out of service, and as a consequence to that, it's unlikely that users would ever perceive that there had been a problem because the NetScaler detected all of this, and those are the high availability features I would really call out.
So first and foremost, you get the high availability of the data center using GSLB. And then secondly, you get the high availability of all of the components that go to deliver a Citrix session, whether it's a virtual desktop or a virtual application. So the user never experiences a black hole and just gets nothing. They always get a response of some sort, at least in theory.
Yeah, I mean, there will be a momentary time lag between, let's say you have a monitor that runs every 5 seconds. Yeah, there might be, if it runs every 5 seconds, a 5-second time lag in there. But we're talking about a responsive environment that automatically detects failures in real time when they're occurring and then reroutes people around those failures.
Great. So we've been talking about the user experience a bit more. Is there anything else that the NetScaler at its core can do to help enhance the user experience?
Yes, absolutely. Taking an example, straight out of the box, the NetScaler has a series of built-in TCP profiles. Those TCP profiles will help to enhance the user experience. If we knew that the user was connecting, for example, over a satellite link and had high latency, there are TCP profiles which would help in that scenario. Putting aside things that we might choose to select or configure there, in a modern Zendesk environment, it's highly likely that the user wouldn't be connecting internally over ICA on on TCP 1494, but instead might be using EDT, which runs over the UDP protocol. Now, EDT, being UDP, isn't going to work at its optimum level if we try and encapsulate that UDP traffic inside of an SSL TCP connection when you come into the NetScaler. So the NetScaler has DTLS. Now, this means that we can build an SSL vServer, SSL gateway vServer, so the user can come in and log in as normal. But we can also build in tandem to that a DTLS UDP vServer, which is also gateway, so it's immediately adjacent to it. So the user comes in, they hit the TCP vServer with their web browser, they enumerate available applications, they choose to launch, let's say Microsoft Word or a desktop, they choose to launch some kind of published resource. And unbeknownst to the user, when their client then connects, the client can connect into the DTLS vServer over UDP. That would be completely seamless to the end user. The end user wouldn't know that had happened at all. They would simply know they connected with their web browser. They did their login as usual, but their session went considerably faster. It went with lower latency. They got better VoIP capabilities, and they got better video.
And this is part of the benefit of NetScaler and Citrix working together and engineering things in tandem, correct?
Absolutely.
Always the first to get the new features that make things run even better than they did before. Okay, so that's all seamless and hidden, as you said. But one of the main pillars for NetScaler across all the businesses that we do is observability. Obviously, as an ADC, it provides immense insight into application, infrastructure, and security, usage, health, and performance for web applications. But for Citrix published apps, they're not web applications. So how can it provide insight there?
Well, we have Gateway Insights, and Gateway Insights is really about logon details and access failure issues. We also have something called HDX Insights. HDX Insights is really about session data, real-time client and network latency information, historical reports, end-to-end performance data, troubleshooting data, kind of things you would need if somebody rang you up and said, I had a problem with the Citrix last week, and you wanted to drill down into that and get beyond the Citrix was broken and find out actually there was a problem with server 3 or Bob's laptop specifically wasn't working.
So you get this, presumably you can view this all together with the Citrix data so that you've got this end-to-end displays from the user to the server and the network in between.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You get full end-to-end visibility from the client through to the application. So the administrator can track the entire path of the user's session coming in from the gateway, across the LAN, into the back-end servers. And of course, from there, you would be able to identify and isolate whatever network issue or of course, server issue might be causing the underlying problem.
Great. Now, you mentioned it before, and I'm going to bring it up now. Another mainstay of support calls is, I can't log in. And you mentioned Gateway Insights. So how does NetScaler help with this I can't log in problem?
Well, with Gateway Insights, you're able to visualize on your ADM platform what's going on. So when you see a large spike, perhaps, in failures, you would know that one of the backend servers wasn't working. If I was to look on that platform and I was to see that there were a huge number of authentication failures, it will graph those and it will show me those. I would be able to say, aha, I know what this problem is. I know there are a large number of authentication failures. I need to go and look at the authentication system. Without that graph showing that those are trending upwards or there's a big spike in there, you're only really going off hearsay data and starting to search. So you're going to be able to immediately see that you've got problems with authentication. You're going to be able to see you've got problems with scanning endpoints. You're going to be able to see all of the various reasons that those authentication failures are or are not working. And of course, the inverse of that's true. When people ring up and say there's been a huge number of problems this morning, you can look across those graphs and say, well, actually there hasn't, or yes, there has for this subset of people, and we will now investigate in the appropriate location.
I just had a vision of someone calling saying, hey, it's working really well today. Thanks a lot. I guess that doesn't happen often.
It's very rare that they do that. The reason I say not working is because back when I was a consultant, I would make changes, and you almost have this concept of you change something on the NetScaler and people ring you up and say something absurd like my printer is on fire, prove it wasn't you. And I realize that's a completely hyperbole example, but you did almost have that concept of prove it's not you. We made a change. The users now report this. Prove it's not you. Now, if I've got graphs historically which show that we have a certain level of authentication failures in this time in the morning, that's going to be extremely useful to set a baseline. This is what the normal baseline looks like. This is where we did the upgrade. This is what it looks like after we've done the upgrade. It looks exactly the same. That's my proof. It's not us. Or conversely, I'm looking at this. This is 100% something's going wrong on that back-end platform, and I can now investigate and solve those problems.
So it's clear that NetScaler is very useful as an addition to Citrix virtual apps and desktops. And we've integrated a lot over the past, and created a very complementary solution. Do you see this continuing into the future?
100%. We have an absolutely fabulous cloud offering, but it's not suitable for everybody. There are organizations who, when you say connect your data and flow your users' data through the cloud environment, we can say, well, it's only metadata that flows through. It's only connection initiation data that flows through. They don't want to do it. They want to have connections going directly from their end users into specific data center pods, which they own. And those clients, some of those clients, I'm thinking military clients being a very specific example, but there's also finance clients who have very similar requirements to that. Disappearing down that rabbit hole for a second, finance clients, lots of them will say things like, I need all of the logging data that comes through. That's not something which is very easy to provide in a cloud environment where you've got a shared pot for multiple customers. You can't provide all of the logging data because it's an environment shared amongst multiple customers. So I come back to the central thesis I was saying here, which really is that there are organizations who will not be able to move to the cloud in the long term. And those organizations will always need to have on-premises platforms. And the future's looking very bright and rosy for them.
But what about the recent privatization and business unit separation? Do you still see NetScaler and Citrix working together and collaborating?
100%. I mean, we're all part of Cloud Software Group. Everybody at Cloud Software Group has to provide, and not has to, wants to. Has to, yes, but wants to. We haven't moved away from these. We haven't moved away from each other. All of my colleagues at Citrix are still my colleagues. I still talk to the same people day to day. We still work together, and we still want to strive to deliver the best possible platforms that we can.
Awesome. Well, that's always great to hear, especially for customers of both. Now, at the end of our podcasts, we usually like to ask our guests to make some type of big prediction, either at the topic at hand or something related to IT in general. Could you maybe, let us know what your big prediction is for the future?
I think my big prediction for the future will be AI. If I go back when I started in IT quite so long ago, there were new things on the horizon, and there's always new things on the horizon, but it's very rare in your career that you come across something that you think this is going to be a complete paradigm shift in the way people think about computer platforms. I would imagine that my children will be working with IT platforms which use AI in ways that we can't even dream of today. There are a huge number of pieces of data that I've manually analyzed over my career, which I could now use something like ChatGPT to analyze in seconds. And I think as that sort of technology becomes more and more prevalent, it's going to get introduced into optimization. It's going to get introduced into security. There's going to be a whole realm of new areas of IT opening up that simply don't exist today. I think if we look over the next 10 to 20 years, my guess is that IT as we know it today will be radically changed by the broader introduction of artificial intelligence.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. Let me just summarize what we've said here. NetScaler provides tremendous value to Citrix environments, from granular remote access and security thereof to load balancing and high availability of all the resources as well as the data centers, and a phenomenal, unparalleled analytics tool in HDX Insight and Gateway Insight, which we've discussed. So I think that it's fair to say that NetScaler and Citrix made for each other and have continued to develop over the years to provide the best user experience and the easiest admin access for Citrix environments, and will continue to do so going forward into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining, and thanks everyone online for joining. You can find our audio version of the podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts. You can also find the video version of this interview on YouTube. If you're already here, let us know what you thought in the comments. And always, please like and subscribe. Thanks.